This is why I love drawing with ball pen, because it's very kneadable. You can draw a line instantly that is very fat and confident, like this, and go over it a couple of times. Or you can like have the barest whisper, and that is usually how I start my drawings. So it's almost like you're not really drawing at that point. It's almost like you're painting, and see, I'm ripping the paper apart. In a later demo here, if you look at this, like you see all this paper breaking here, and I don't really mind it. I think it adds texture to a drawing. Basic shapes. And not only am I going to explain basic shapes here, I'm going to explain to you how to render it, how I would render it with a ball pen. So for instance, I would use this one. The way that I'm going to explain is there are 4 colors on this. What you have to remember is that green is a very light value, and you can feather it in. Then you have red, which I prefer using. It looks really nice if you do a red first and then do a pass of black around it for the outlines. The red gives like warm tones, and then by contrast, other tones become cooler. Then you have black, which I also really enjoy. And then you have blue. Now, interestingly enough, when you use these 4 colors, the colors themselves are bound together differently. What I mean by that is, I lick my finger a lot in this, which is kind of disgusting, but it creates nice soft edges. So you see that the blue one reacts to that differently than a black one, and the red one reacts to it differently, and the green one barely. So these are things that I think about. See, I had to rub almost the black off. So the reason why I'm explaining this to you is, it's not just a different color and different value. For smudging them, and I've never talked about this anywhere, I don't mind sometimes ripping the paper, because if the paper becomes wet, you can pre-wet it, and then your lines become much more thicker. It absorbs the ink a lot better than if I were just to do the same pressure like this. You see that the lines are completely different than if you pre-wet it. And let's clean that up, and then you draw normally. So that creates a different line as well. That I thought is interesting to know if you use ball pen a lot. So for example, if I were to draw something in the foreground, like say this ball, and then let's give it a cast shadow. Like it's always thicker where the form is, and then it fades out. And you can already use this one for a nicer gradation in there. And then I would sort of follow the form like this for the shadow shape of the ball. And what I like to do is, instead of drawing the core shadow, I discovered that you can just smudge the core shadow in, and it looks already a lot more natural, because you don't even need to, the gradient takes care of itself. Then the second darkest is the blue one, which we can put right here. And then we do a core shadow again. This is my finger, thumb. It reacts so much more to blue. That's why I like using blue sometimes over black, because if I want to get really smudgy with a drawing, then the blue will take that better. We have our red, which is then here, and red also really receives that well. So sometimes you don't need to put a lot of marks to create that for the red. Like see, I just made a couple of marks and I smudged it, and it's right there. And then green is the lightest one, so if you want to put a little detail or cloud somewhere in the back, you can see that green. So that's how I think about these colors. You can also use them for more whimsical things like adding blood to a drawing or be creative. That's sort of the way that I think about that. For example, a sphere that we just did is a basic shape. Then we also have a cylinder. So let's draw through this. So everything is made up out of these objects. And how I would approach a cylinder, as a cast shadow, and the light source is here, and the shadow goes there. So if this is our sun, and then the shadow goes still there. Like here we fade it, but see how light I'm going right here, because I know if I'm gonna go in, see, this will smudge through. And that's how I kind of use it. Don't be afraid to get some ink on your tongue, because it will happen sometimes. I don't know how healthy that is. And then you just follow the form And then again, to create the core shadow, you just go over this. And sometimes you tear the paper, but that's okay. I think it's nice because it adds a little bit of texture. That's why I like using this thicker paper that I set at the start. You can go really dark here, and you get automatically your core shadow, and then your cast shadow with a gradient. Then you have your shadow here. There is a gradient here because I smudged it that it feels like a fill light here. And then you have your true light, like the light side. And then you have your core shadow as well here, because it's the darkest, and you could emphasize that. And if you really wanted then the highlight, then you have to darken the light side too. And then the highlight would be here. And you can do that, but just make sure that the light side is always lighter than the dark side so that your highlight can pop. But then in return, you should make all of this a little bit darker for that to work. And you can do that in drawing a scenario where that would work when you have a nose or something. Like when I'm drawing a nose, which is like a sphere, like here, and then we have the cast shadow of the nose. And I already know that the highlight is going to be there. And then I sort of create a tone equally around the nose. And I just come in for the smudged shadow. And then the highlight just pops up from the nose. So it's very important to group your values. All right, we have a sphere, we have a cylinder, and then we have our box. Now again, let's add a little bit of a shadow to the box. Like we have here an occlusion. If you put a dark shape on the bottom, it adds more weight to it. So let's do that here. And then we have a gradient. And you see how well blue receives this dirty treatment. And then depending on where the light is, I know that a lot of my earlier work has a lot of hatching to it, but the longer I'm doing this, the less I want there to be the busy with hatching. Here there's a gradient from top to bottom. So make sure this one is darker so we can go over it again. And then here, could probably add a little bit of white here. We have another one, but it's not going to be as dark as that one over there. And this can be sort of a box. So let's add a little bit of bevels to it. You see that my approach is kind of dirtier than most people that would draw basic shapes, because I'm not necessarily interested in it being 100% correct. I'm interested in transmitting the story. So now on top of this, I can darken this here so it feels like there's bevels to it, but only on top of the rules that I set at the start, so with the gradients. So that is the box. You can emphasize the cast shadow here by making it a little bit darker, but make sure that it fades out. And then the last one of the basic shapes can have our cone, which has shadow like this, occlusion, again, the reason why I'm doing this with the blue is because it receives that the best. You can see I started to draw the core shadow here, but with this little trick it's not necessary, because I can just draw the side and then can create the core shadow itself. You can always draw it if you want, like just a line, and then go over it again, reinforce that. So it's almost like you're not really drawing at that point. It's almost like you're painting, and see I'm ripping the paper apart, and I don't even care because you can always go over it again. That's what I like about the stick paper. You're gonna see this in many of my drawings that this happened. For instance, in a later demo here, if you look at this, like you see all this paper breaking here, and I don't really mind it. I think it adds texture to a drawing. This is why I love drawing with ball pen, because it's very kneadable. You can draw a line instantly that is very fat and confident, like this, and go over it a couple of times. Or you can like have the barest whisper, and that is usually how I start my drawings, the line weight. So if things are in front of one another, if you increase the line weight, it will feel like it is closer to us. A wise idea as well might be, because a ball pen has a lot of smudging to it. This hasn't happened here yet, but what I usually have with me is a little patch of toilet paper or tissue, and when it starts to clot, then I would just wipe it off like this, so you can see there's a little bit. And if you do that enough, it will never clot, so that is another important thing. What I sometimes also do is I wet this, I put ink on it, and then you can sort of also brush in values on existing drawing very subtly. So that's something I do as well, so now you know all my secrets. Anyway, thank you so much, and let's jump into the next chapter.